Thank you, everyone. So my name is Ailyn Mendoza, and I'm the Director of Architecture and Client Services at IrisVR. And today what I want to go over is the idea of developing new workflows within AEC. And I know that it seems kind of silly, but let me see, is this my, oh, this is the one I'm looking for. This is important, the wine glass. Keep this in mind as we're hoping this becomes a really critical workflow tool. And so we, I guess Iris, as Scott was mentioning, we're a tech startup. We focus on developing virtual reality software specifically for AEC. We are in beta right now, so all our software is open and it's free. We just make you, sign up for it, so I'll give you guys information about that afterwards. But at the core of who we are is we are a team that's pretty divided between computer engineers and architects. And what we are tackling is a frustration that comes of dealing in 3D models and 3D geometries that ultimately always tend to become 2D images. And so what we're doing is leveraging the opportunities that exist between the gaming industries, virtual reality, and augmented realities to turn that into what can be assets for a professional workflow. And so if you guys will humor me while I go through this, this is a typical workflow that we see happening in most offices, which is where the team gathers, you conceptualize, you come up with an idea. Then afterwards, the team breaks off. You develop materials and deliverables either in a 3D format or you have a 2D drawing. Then ultimately that gets plotted onto a sheet of paper. And then you end up having, everyone gathers around, the big boards where you critique, you get the red Sharpie of power, you mark up your drawings. And so can I ask, just for a show of hands, how many of you have either worked in that setting or still continue to work in that setting? Yeah, that's. And so an advanced workflow that we see in another segment of offices is still similar. You conceptualize, you break off into teams, you develop 2D and 3D materials. Then someone, that lucky person in your office, ends up having to be the one that generates these video animations to satisfy the client, to win over the competition. And they're the ones that are there till 3 a.m. in the morning trying to meet these deadlines, asleep at their desk waiting for that final rendering output. But unfortunately, what still happens is that after you've created this beautiful 3D content, it still ends up projected onto a 2D surface where everyone is still gathered around seeing a very particular view that has been curated. And I'm guilty of it as a designer, but we often tend to choose the most strategic places for our clients to experience a project, sometimes in bird's eye view or moments that don't really ever match what the actual experience of a space is. So what we're trying to do at Iris is really make everyone's life easier and improve on that flow of communication. So, you still go through the same classical process of conceptualizing, breaking up into teams, developing 2D and 3D materials. But now, rather than having to have one person who becomes this office designated, video game person spending hours, Iris allows you to drag and drop your 3D file into our platform and create what is, for the most part, an instantaneous. It takes about 30 seconds, depending on your file size, and it converts it into a virtual reality experience. And then using an Oculus Rift or an HTC Vive, you can then either put your client, you can put your design team, you can put your board of directors. And so what's most important is that we're keeping material that is developed in 3D and is also being experienced in 3D, not just as a 2D printed object. And so over 2 years of development, we have developed what we now call Prospect. This is our desktop platform that installs onto your computer, and it works using the Oculus Rift, the HTC Vive, and it supports Revit files, SketchUp files, OBJ files, and very soon Rhino files as well. And so what I thought would be most useful would be to walk you through some of the ways that our clients are currently using the software in different phases of work and also in different industries. And so this is a video. Yeah, so this is a live video that I did just showing the workflow. I have a booth, so you guys are welcome to come by, and I'll do this in person. But so essentially you're in Revit. You go into add-ins. You do send to Oculus, you select your 3D geometry, and this is just using the sample file. You'll see that it's processing in the bottom hand, this end. Yeah, it's processing. The Iris platform will pop up. You do launch. And this would be the moment where you then take, the Oculus Rift, you put it on, and you can either use your keyboard to navigate the space, or you can use an Xbox controller, which is a little better. And so we have a series of features built in. The one that I'm showing here now is layer management. So you can turn off, the windows to be able to have a different perspective. You can adjust your height. I'm a little shorter, so I make it more realistic. And what, the layers, what's really great is it allows you to have manipulation where you can set up different layers as different design options and navigate a client through that experience. We're also building in the idea that you can use the VR experience as a way to experience time, shadows, and also as a way to create annotations in a review session. This is one of them here. This is the call-out tool, so it just lets you kind of call out moments. The brush tool right now, it's a little harder to navigate, but this will be incorporated with the Oculus Touch once it's released in April, so you'll be able to have more natural movement. Then you can also have snapshots as a way of generating a record of that session with your client. Those get saved automatically to a designated folder as JPEGs. So you can return we call this the dollhouse. You can move around. So that's briefly how it works. The SketchUp version works the same way. You just drag and drop your file directly rather than opening it from within Revit. And so I guess some facts about where we are now and where we are seeing the majority of usage. Naturally a lot of architects in construction, engineering teams, interior design, real estate. And one that is also picking up a lot of interest is in the filming stage, where there's very short deadlines to produce very large sets. There's limited budget, and there's very small room for error. In the last year, we've had 12,000 3D files that have been viewed within Iris. We currently have 5,000 beta customers that are signed up both for our desktop app and also our mobile app, which is complementary to the desktop. And we have a surprising number of the of VR market, everyone using the Oculus, and we're very excited for the new release happening now in April. And so these are the case studies that I'll show now, and these are all using Prospect. This is a structural engineering company in St. Petersburg, Russia, that is using our software. And so they specialize just in, very complex rebar systems for structures, and they use, on the side, you can see what their workflow is. From the concept, they go into Tekla, they design all the components there, then they export it into SketchUp just because we're not integrated with Tekla yet, and then they bring it into VR. And this has been one of kind of my favorite stories so far. And so this is in the same project. They send me this picture from the site, and what they realized was that for the most part, the contractors and people that are on site, when they receive, this set of drawings that is, on a good day, 200 sheets, they read it, they understand it, but it's very easy to just not catch things. And so he sent me this rebar right there. They had missed adding them to that system, so they were able to take, the contractor back to their office, load the model, put it into, Iris and give them a really brief understanding that's very intuitive as to what they're building, and it's bridging the gap between the drawings and the experience. I live in New York on the 9th floor, and this made me feel really unsafe, that there's people missing where the rebars should be. This is also one of my top favorite ones because I am a cat owner, and cats are very cute, and they make great memes. They're an architecture office based in New York. They're called Co-Office, and they were commissioned to do a project where it's a cat cafe and also a cat adoption center. And so they essentially were struggling with how do we compromise the different scales of what you experience as a person visiting, but then also how cats navigate the space. And let me see here. So their workflow is they do the concept, they go into Revit and then Rhino. And so this is one of the renderings, and they greatly benefit from being able to experience that. And it actually was built exactly how the renderings are. If you're ever in New York, I highly encourage you to go to the Cat Cafe. It's the best 15 minutes that you'll pay for, and you can adopt a cat too. Another architecture firm based out of Vermont, Smith Buckley Architects. This is for, essentially it's a skincare company that they were working on renovating the interiors. And something fun that they confessed to was the fact that they actually had no intention of using VR with their client. They were very skeptical that the client would be open to the possibility of using VR. And they essentially found that there were a lot of different ways to lay out the interior spaces. And no matter how many renderings they showed, how many plans they showed, the client was simply just not really pleased with the outcome, and being able to provide criticism and constructive criticism to move the project forward. And so they finally decided to give Iris a go, and I think it's great that the client, he sees himself as someone who's visually challenged, which I think at some moment all of us has had a client who's not trained in the same design syntax that we are. And it essentially just allows them to navigate the space and become much more excited about what he's seeing than what is printed and presents it on a board. This is another project from Smith Buckley Architects. And so this is one that has a lot of really tight spaces. It's a dispensary. And so they used it as well to just kind of work through the knickknacks and quirks of the space through the client. It's another one from Smith Buckley, and this one's actually quite interesting. They're renovating a new plant. It's a coal plant in Vermont. And so they're using virtual reality as a way to mitigate existing conditions with the design and being able to begin to identify, as Jeff has mentioned before, moments of collision and conflict that can really be prevented early on if systems become integrated. And so, as I mentioned before, we have two products. The first one is the desktop product, Prospect. And Prospect allows you to have that fully navigable VR experience. Our mobile app is complementary to Prospect, but we're seeing a lot of use in it as well. The main difference to remember between what you can do on your desktop and what you can do on the mobile app is that the desktop is meant to be dynamic as an experience. The mobile app is static. And by that, I mean what you are seeing in the mobile app are moments that are 360 stereoscopic renderings that can be pushed out. You cannot walk through it, but you can perceive space, and you can also perceive everything that's rendered all around you. So it's a good way right now for offices to be able to push out these images to clients. All they really have to do is download the Iris app. The image gets uploaded by the designer on their end. The client has access to it, and then using a Google Cardboard or the Gear VR, you can experience that. And so she's using the Gear VR, and what you see in the bottom is just a screen grab of what it looks like on your phone prior to putting it into one of the devices. And this is one more, this is one study that specifically used mobile. This is also with Co-Office, and they focused on interior design. They had a client who is a real estate company and for some reason had a enormous office that they wanted to have as their real estate headquarters, but also provide some kind of like gallery and art space, which if you know New York spaces, to say that you have an office, that you can have an office and an art space is kind of mind-boggling. And so they, what you see here are the raw files of those stereoscopic images. And as when you export them, they create these small vignettes that are capturing everything around you. And so what they're doing is they essentially use mobile as a way to engage the real estate company and the owner on what different aspects of the office would look like. But now they've been able to reuse those same vignettes and use them for the contractor. So now the contractor, anyone else is involved can just as easily download those images onto their phone. In moments, they explained to me they have a moment where they have a herringbone pattern on the floor that then merges into like this curved stair, and they were struggling a lot to be able to understand, to explain to the contractor what those kind of connections and seams were looking like when it was just in a 2D format. And so one of the things that we, while we're still a very young company and VR in itself is a very new tool, one of the things that we are trying to understand constantly from our current clients is where does VR fit in the building cycle? And so, and I think this kind of might touch upon a lot of the things that we've heard in the, 3 presentations prior to mine. And, one of the things, we begin with schematic design, and with schematic design, having VR, it's a really fast and easy way to have your client understand the space, to get critical buy-in from them. It also allows for just thorough communication. It minimizes a lot of the things that don't always get expressed, like once again with these renderings, and it also reduces the cost for a lot of those materials. During design development, it facilitates a lot of communication within parties. It continues to improve upon the ability to move a schedule along faster without having to have, just iterative conversations over and over again with a client about, where the design is going. It's, it's automatic, it's there. One of the other ways is once you begin to move into the area of construction documentation, it allows for multiple teams to come at once with one model and see how all those things begin to overlap in a true to scale environment. So that's where you begin to detect moments of, interfaces not working properly. We kind of have a running meme in the office of should have used VR, and that image of the wall being built right over the toilet. That'll probably become one of our office memes of should have used virtual reality. And then during construction administration and facilities management, one of the things that we've seen a lot of interest is in developing tools that allow VR to become an onboarding tool, so that at the end of the project, you're not just handing over, a CD that has these PDF files that the person after you will likely know how to read them half of the time. The other half, they're not going to be sure. But it allows for, with the integration of VR, allows for an intuitive onboarding experience and training to minimize any, issues that can happen in the future, and as well as planning. And so a little bit about where we are planning to move in the future. In particular, Prospect, which is the desktop application, we continuously work on improving speed so that you can load larger and larger models at any particular moment, whether it's from Revit or whether it's from SketchUp, better texture management, improved lighting environments so that you can retain any lighting information, let's say specifically for interior designers. If you have fixtures, you can also bring that into the model for any interior conditions. texture support, one thing, and then the other thing that we're really excited about is we're developing what we call a multiplayer conference mode, which allows for large companies that have, that are global, that have headquarters, let's say, in Australia and Germany and in the US, to use virtual reality as a meeting place, the same way that we use, let's say, GoToMeeting now to capture many people in the same spot, and then you'd be able to have this meeting. It'll reduce, travel time, just costs of meeting coordination, and also being able to do this more often if you have the access to do it. Another kind of long-term project for Iris is the ability to do object recognition once you're inside the VR space, meaning that you'd be able to, have chairs that you can select and move over, walls being able to shift in their conditions, beams, and that we think would be really great because not only are you experiencing, but now you're truly designing within virtual reality. We're also going to be rolling out a project management library, which will allow for large teams to collaborate in one central space where all these files can be saved. And then we're also developing Navisworks and IFC file support. The mobile viewer, for right now, one of the main things that we are developing is the feature that if you send out, your client downloads the app, they put it into their Google Cardboard, they see it, a way for them to quickly give you feedback without having to then, open up their Gmail account, their Outlook, send you a message. So it becomes a really cyclical and easy process. And then also being able to be within your VR model. So let's say, you're in Prospect, you're inside a Revit model, and you say, this would be a great moment for a 3D, a 360 rendered panoramic. You can save that, and it gets sent out automatically into the mobile viewer. And so in conclusion, if you don't want to be that guy, say no to manual conversion, and then, go ahead and join the Iris team. Say yes to automatic conversion and less hours of manual labor. And you can sign up for it at Iris. My email's in the bottom, and like I said, I have a booth, and I'm happy to walk you through a demo of the software as well. So.
Great. Thank you very much, Ailyn. Stay for questions. Actually, while we're asking Ailyn some questions, can I ask the panelists for the next session, the next panel discussion to come up and prepare for your next presentation? So, Ailyn.
Yes.
This technology is obviously relatively new, and from what I've seen with Iris, obviously it's been adopted very well. And I know through personal experience, what I have found and what really surprised me was the impact that the tool had as a design validation tool within our firm. So not only for our clients, but also the architects and the designers exploring their model and actually confirming what they're designing. What's been your feedback from your clients that has surprised you on some of the things that they've found using this tool?
So definitely increasing client trust early on in the project, where what you see is what you get, kind of ties into the idea of like validating design decisions. That's always something that I guess designers struggle with. One kind of conversation that I had was really fun, and he told me that he felt that with Iris and being within virtual reality, that when he was walking a client through a space, he's an interior designer, that the client could see more than just the dollar signs. And where they struggle was a lot of times for renderings, you didn't just render the walls of a space and the floor. They do renderings that have, very high-end furniture, that they have, very specific fixtures. And essentially now in VR, he can show them the alternative of like, well, you don't want to include all this furniture and all these fixtures, so sure, like this is what it looks like. And instantaneously, most clients are like, oh, this is dreadful, like I don't want to see it. So in terms of business for him, it was actually helping to upsell the client on a lot of finishings that otherwise they would just kind of disregard as like, oh, that's just like fancy stuff that gets added to a perspective.
Yeah, interesting, interesting. Any questions from the audience?
When do you expect to have the IFC files and Navisworks integrated?
So that's something that we're kind of hoping to have up and ready by the end of the year. There's a lot of testing that has to go in on our end with just all the variables that can exist and all types of different file, kind of like, we have files that we work with and we're like, oh, this works fine. And then someone will kind of send us an edge scenario and we're like, oh, we got to go back and test and do all that stuff. So it's a constant process, but we are hoping, we've seen a lot of interest for IFC support and Navisworks. So we're definitely pushing that as a priority. Yeah, of course.
Okay, another quick question for you. So obviously this is a fantastic design tool. What have you seen with the construction industry?
So one of the big things that everyone that I've spoken to on the construction side is they're really interested in how they can reduce the cost of mock-ups. And I see that with healthcare, with hospitality, where typically they're required, in particular in healthcare, they have to have a full-size mock-up of what the surgical room is going to look like, with the laboratories, with the sequence of entry and exit. And for example, like Mornington Construction, one of our users right now, they have a client for which they've essentially they've taken a warehouse and they've had to build this true to scale model. And in a typical process, they would do one iteration of that mock-up, which could cost, a good amount of money, let's say $50,000 between labor, time, and construction materials. And then once they're done with the schematic phase, they then have to go back and build another one that belongs to the design development. It gets torn down. And what we're trying to do and help them figure out is a way that they can reduce the cost of mock-ups, perhaps not completely eliminate them, because they're still dealing with a lot of stakeholders that are not versed in design, but just have one that is more about just the separation of spaces and just general walls, but that the VR experience will supplement all those changes. So you can kind of be, virtual reality, see these things, take it off, but then also have still a physical association to that. Also with residential homes, a lot of large construction companies where they do, I guess for lack of a better word, cookie cutter houses, they usually tend to have a few models of these houses that they have to build in order to show prospective buyers what are the different finishes in a kitchen, what are the different finishes, for flooring, for exterior experiences. And where we're seeing that it's moving with the implementation of Iris is to just have one model house. And then this model house becomes outfitted with stations, either using the Google Cardboard, where the client can download, an app that's customized to them. They're in the kitchen, they can toggle between different views of the kitchen. And then for, some clients that do want to have even a more expansive view, you can have different stations set up around the house with, an Oculus Rift and a laptop, and allow the client to see those different options.
Wow,
So,
very interesting.
yeah.
Any last questions? No? Great, thank you very much, Ailyn.
Of course, thank you.